Clark County Museum, Jeanne Burke.
I won't give you too many details. I don't want anybody to nod off. We're 4 years old. I can take it off if I want to. We were in the courthouse in a small room upstairs on the 4th floor, but Mr. Coots didn't get reelected. And the new coroner doesn't have an office in his home, so they needed the space, so the museum had to leave. We had no place to go, so we have stuff scattered all over Clark County that's in our collection. And we were looking at a site on Michigan Avenue, and I did bring some pictures of it over here. I might as well just take this with me and go over here and show them to you. I don't know how well you can see these. They're not huge, but I put them up on PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint. I don't do it anymore.
It lost its power.
Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much, or I lost mine. This is the site we were looking at on Michigan Avenue. And this is the way it did look. It was the old bonsai company and the old house that kind of sits back behind that, 721, 725, Michigan. The house dates to about 1850. It was the home of Thomas Jefferson Howard, a prominent Democrat in Clark County. And this is the way the house looked before we got a hold of it. We had signed a contract with the current mayor and the Department of Redevelopment to have the museum go down in this property, and the city council had other ideas. They wanted to let request for proposals for that whole area that was cleared out by Mayor Galligan for the canal. And then when Mayor Galligan wasn't reelected, the canal kind of went south, and they didn't know what to do, so the museum asked to use these two buildings. Here's a picture of the house after we cleaned out the front of it. All volunteer work. This is what it looked like on the inside. It was one of the most awful messes you ever saw. We shoveled out 2 or 3 dumpsters full of trash. It was a Section 8 housing. And there's another shot of it so you can see how bad it was. This is one of the upstairs bedrooms. It had been made into apartments, I guess, for years and years. And of course, this is what the sign company building looks like. Currently, we have most of our collection stored in this building. The city council wanted to let requests for proposals for the area for a developer to come in and knock everything down and build, I don't know, maybe Disney World or something fancy and nice for Jeffersonville. And the end date for those proposals is May 29th, so we won't know anything about the museum until after May 29th. And this is another picture. This is the attached, or not really attached, it's sort of attached kitchen for this house. Pretty rough. And, oops, I'm losing it. Just more pictures ad nauseum. And this is what we had hoped to make it look like, with our own money and our own labor. To turn it into something that Jeff would be proud of. So we don't know whether we're going to be able to get the buildings now or not. We'll see what happens after May 29th. Now let me go back up to the podium. And you can come up and look at any of this stuff after I'm finished if you want to. There is a plan afoot to have an arts and cultural district on the north end of Spring Street, which would include the art classes that are currently being taught at Jeff High. They're community art. Anybody can go to them, create artistic things. So they wanted to move that down there into the old body shop buildings. And then the New Albany Fire Museum needs to relocate. They need to get out of the building they're in New Albany, and they have an absolutely first-rate, awesome collection of firefighting memorabilia. Some of you have probably been down to New Albany and seen that. They wanted to come to the Bales building, which is sort of directly in front of Michigan Avenue. It's empty now, so you'll know which one it is. So we don't know whether they're going to be allowed to go in there, but I kind of think that an arts and cultural district would tie in with the new Big 4 walking bridge, would be bringing people over here from Louisville. We need something in Jeffersonville. I know David Karam made the remark in a meeting that it wouldn't matter if we had a ramp on the Jeffersonville end because nobody would come here. So that's what we're fighting against. So we need to have some sort of an attraction for them to come and see. I think it would be a tremendous boost for Jeffersonville, and like I said, we were willing to rehab the buildings at our own expense. So we'll see what happens. Why should you even care about a county museum? There is no time in the classrooms anymore for teachers to teach local history, for one thing. And Clark County is arguably the most historic county in the state of Indiana. The Falls of the Ohio Fossil Beds is a World Heritage Site. It's the largest exposed fossil bed in the world. Clark County has a 200-year history with the U.S. Army, beginning in 1786 and going to roughly 1986. It was the home of General George Rogers Clark, soldier of the Revolutionary War. It was the start of the Lewis and Clark expedition. It was the home of the U.S. Quartermaster Depot, one of only, maybe 4 or 5 in the United States, and it was here for 88 years. It was the home of the eugenics movement, something not quite so positive, but the first vasectomy, for your information, was done at the prison in Clarksville. We did have the first prison. We did have the first prison in Indiana. The oldest prison was in Jeffersonville at that time. Clark County men, we are important both in national history, as I've just told you, and in state history. It was men from Clark County who guaranteed that Indiana would be admitted to the Union as a free state and not a slave state. They defeated Governor William Henry Harrison's attempt to force Congress to admit Indiana to the Union as a slave state in 1807 when they held a convention at Springville up around Charlestown, Indiana. And what they did, it was James, John, and Charles Beggs, the Beggs brothers, Judge James Scott, Thomas Carr, Davis Floyd, and other men, Jonathan Jennings, and they developed what was called the doctrine of squatter sovereignty. And what it said to Congress, it gave Congress an out, and you know how they love outs. They said, why not let the people decide? Wait until we get enough population in Indiana that we can go ahead and become a state, and let the people decide whether they want to be slave or free. Congress latched on to that, and Harrison's petition was defeated, and Indiana was admitted in 1816 as a free state. 2 of the most famous faces in the world are from Clark County, Colonel Sanders and Papa John Schnatter. So we have some things to be proud of. Now I'm going to go over here to the artifacts, and I'll tell you a little bit about the things. Mostly tonight I brought small stuff because the heavy stuff really gets to me. I can't handle it real well. We have here a quilt that I'm sure you can read. This was made in 1918 of U.S. Army shirts. You know, the women in Jeffersonville worked at sewing for the Quartermaster Depot. And this was, it's got their names, the names of several of the people who sewed stitches on this. So we have that was a donation to the museum. We, just out of the clear blue sky, I got a call one day from a man in Virginia, and he said, you know, I got a couple of newspapers up in my attic that are from Jeffersonville, Indiana. And I said, okay. And he said, I want to send those to you. So we have them here. I have to be very careful. These are from 1856. This one needs to be mended. Look how big they are.
Is that Bill Scott's birth?
Yeah, it's on page 4 under classifieds. They're looking for a parent for him. Gotcha, Bill. As I said, he had 2 of these newspapers, and one of them I left in the package folded up. These were sent from Jeffersonville, Indiana to Scotland. They even have the postage stamp still on them. So those are kind of a precious treasure for us. Let me move this a little bit out of the way. Let's put this over here. I have to be real careful with those newspapers. We don't have any consistent newspapers until after 1872 when the evening news started. So those are rare. And he just gave them to us. Now this little nondescript table, there's only, as far as I know, one like this in the world. It came from Connecticut. I got a phone call one day from a man in Connecticut that bought this at an auction, and he said it really belongs back home in Jeffersonville. And I said, well, okay. And he said, well, now it's not fancy, but the thing of it is, when you pick it up and turn it over, and I'll do that right here. I'm going to bring this over here. There's a little postcard taped to the bottom of this that came out of an estate sale in Connecticut, and it was made by the German prisoners of war at the Jeffersonville Quartermaster Depot, and even has the date on it. What does that say? 1944. So this is sort of like prison stuff. And here's a picture of the prisoners at the Jeffersonville Quartermaster Depot. Maybe one of these guys was the person who made this table. Just made out of scrap lumber back in the barracks that's now America Place warehouses. Ones with the bars over the windows are the barracks. So I think this is pretty much the only one like this in the world. Who knows? You had a question?
Yes, I do. The person that had the mastectomy, was it a female or a male?
Vasectomy.
Vasectomy.
Oh,
So that means it was a male, I'm pretty sure. Okay.
That's actually God.
Did I watch? No, I wasn't there, but they told me that you scratched your name on the wall in that room. This is a piece of children's Edwardian clothing. It's a little girl's dress from about, let's see, she was born in 1910? Yeah, 10.
About Bill Scott's age.
Yeah. This came out of the Spriestersbach farm, and most of our clothing pieces came from there. It was a farm that was in their family from 1830 until Louis died in 2000 and, maybe 5, I can't remember. They had 3 children. They were all college educated, none of them married, and they never ever threw anything away. This is their picture. The little devil child sitting on the arm of the chair is Louis. And he never got much bigger than that either. He was a tiny little. We have their toys that came out of Spriestersbach's farm. This is a 1914 cootie game, and it still works. We have a stief, I never could figure out how you pronounce that, wooden jointed bear. These are all Edwardian 1920s. We have several celluloid toys that they would play with in the bathtub. Of course, celluloid was before plastic, so those are several of those. We have Eugenia's baby rattle. She was born in 1910. That's a celluloid piece. The little fish and all that kind of stuff. And 2 telephones so that they could call each other. They could pretend that they were calling each other, and these still work. Usually we only display our toys at the museum at Christmas time. We put them under the Christmas tree. Mrs. Spriestersbach was a Lutz, L-U-T-Z. She was a school teacher. These are her slates. We also got several big pieces that of course I couldn't bring down to show you, but there's our 2-seater wagon made at Louisville Wagon Works, and behind it our doctor's buggy is badly in need of repair, but it costs a lot of money. The doctor's buggy was made at Holtzbach's in Jeffersonville. And Spriestersbach's had a blacksmith shop up on the square in Charlestown for years and years, and they sold buggies out of there, probably that were made at Holtzbach's. We have here kind of a rare boy doll. It's an Edwardian doll. There are no clothes for him, and he's kind of beaten up, but that's the way dolls were back in those days. We have several dolls from there. We have a crumb set that you used to scrape the crumbs off the tablecloth with. That came from Spriestersbach's. We have a vintage Boy Scout of America handkerchief. Looks like 1920s, 19-teens. Bill Scott will know how old this is. I'm sure.
Started in 1912, so
12.
So yeah, shortly after that. We have a sort of a letter opener from the Pan American Exposition, excuse me. Don't know who that was. This is a sunbonnet that probably belonged to Louis's mother. She was born in very early 1880. That's a real one, a little girl's sunbonnet. This came from the prison where it is located, well, where Colgate's is now. They had businesses that were associated with the prison that would come in and use prison labor to make cheap goods. And one of these businesses was Hall, Semple and Company, Jeffersonville, Indiana. And they were there right at the beginning of the Civil War. And after that, when they opened up the prison in Michigan City, they took their stuff up there. This is not particularly well made, but it's a spider and it's pretty old, I'd say, so that's kind of a nice piece to have. This little blouse is probably, I have to be careful with this. Of course, it's a child's blouse. It's probably from the 1860s or 1870s. Of course, it came out as Priesters backs, and it has tiny, tiny little buttons all the way down the back. It's sometimes rare to find them that still have the buttons. They would cannibalize buttons for new clothing. This piece, and I think you could probably hear me just fine without that. This piece is from between 1830 and 1840, so we call it 1835. We just split the difference. And we know that because of the way the sleeves are sewn into the shoulders. I took it to a textiles expert, Carol Ely at Locust Grove, who was a consultant for museums all over the United States, and she's the one who dated it for me. So we have some really old pieces in our collection. This is, what do you call that? Commemorative? Is that the best word to use? A commemorative handkerchief from the Lee Jeans Company. It looks like 1930s. It's worth about $500 or $600. They sold one on eBay for that much. And you can see it's got the kind of 1930s streamlined vehicles and the bib overalls and all the different kinds of overalls that they made on it. That came out as Priesters backs. I just brought the copy because the map is very rare. And this is a copy of Judge John Miller's 1809 map of Utica, Indiana. You can't see it very well, and the original map is very faint because they used that iron gall ink on it, and it turns brown and eats holes in the paper. But let me see if I can find Utica on here. Grant 17, where are you? Jump out at me. Here it is. Down here where my finger is Utica. They've drawn a circle around it, and all roads lead out of Utica all over Clark County. So it was their hope that Utica would really turn out to be a booming, bustling village. And this map was donated to us. It's on parchment, so I didn't bring it because it's so delicate. But we do have the copy. Look at it. It has some landowners' names on it also. Child's riding crop. Every one of the Priesters back children rode horses, and they had buggies. And so their mother also rode horses. The Lutz family owned that farm until, Mattie Lutz married Julius Priesters back in 1906. And so it had been in the Lutz family since the 1830s. It was her family, not his. And those girls rode too. So this is like, 1890s, turn of the 20th century child's riding crop. And we have also the long adult riding crop and a bullwhip they probably used on the kids. This is Maddie's dress when she was a little girl in the 1880s. And of course it's homemade. Let's see if I can get it up here right. It's pretty fancy back then. And they cannibalized the buttons from it. It doesn't have any buttons on it anymore. We even have their underwear. Any of you, Bill, you remember these?
He still wears them.
There's your hatch in the back. That's right, first hatchback. Speaking of hatchettes, of course the handle is new. It's a modern handle, but the tomahawk itself was found under the porch of a house on, I think it's on High Street in Charlestown. Guy remodeled the porch and he was digging around under there and pulled out the tomahawk. So that's very old. The rest of the things that I brought are photographs. The beautiful old Clark County Bank that was replaced by the bank that's there now, Chase Bank. I'm hoping that Bill, these pictures are like from 1913. I hope Bill knows some of the people in these pictures and can identify them for me. This is Jeffersonville City Administration, 1914 through 1917. Mr. Hydron, Hiram Heaton, Mayor Ernest Routh. Any of you remember Mr. Routh? Luther Childs, John Kipper, Sam Eisler.